Right then, so for the final round of questions from Slido. So we have one there, the top question for Sue, if you could have a go at answering that one. How can we reconcile the notion of energy supply from offshore farms with other LSI interests such as fisheries, shipping, tourism, and safety/defense? So you need to have the light off. Yeah. No, that's still not working. Now, should be.
That's better.
Yeah.
Yes, that's better. Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And that is why maritime spatial planning is developing as a key new area of planning activity. But I think what's come out to me as somebody who's both a terrestrial planner and that is increasingly involved in marine spatial planning is that the sort of analysis that we've undertaken with the value chains really begins to tease out the land-sea interaction issues. So this isn't just something that is about sorting out the marine environment. So the Dutch North Sea example that I gave you for wind energy, they did have to change major shipping lanes routes to enable the development of the wind farms because there are certain sort of ground conditions and operational conditions. They can't just go anywhere, certainly at the moment with the technology that's available. But of course they do also raise a lot of concerns, and some of those concerns are not just sea-based. So fisheries concerns are perhaps more sea-based, so they need to be located in areas away from nursery grounds for, you know, sort of young fish and that sort of thing. But this relationship with tourism is important, and that's where actually the value chain analysis reveals that it isn't the coastal communities particularly that are benefiting from the economic value. The local stickability is a term that we used of the economic benefits of wind farms. Those benefits are spread right across many countries, certainly not concentrated on the coast. But in many regions, there is seen to be a conflict with tourism. This is particularly, we did a similar case study in the Pomeranian Bight around tourism and wind farms, and there is a lot of potential conflict identified there. Whether it's real, you know, we don't know, but there's a lot of perception. But I think perhaps related to that is, you might be surprised to hear this, that in terms of hard-to-reach groups for marine spatial planning, maritime spatial planning, terrestrial planners are amongst the top hard-to-reach stakeholders. There is limited engagement so far in MSP activities, and there's a real disconnect between the two systems, not everywhere. I wouldn't like to characterize that as a sort of, but it's not an uncommon situation, even in places like the Netherlands. So, you know, I think that's something food for thought for people in this room.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. A question then to Fiona, the most highly ranked one there. Which European regions are leaders in using financial instruments, and what are the reasons for that? The question highlighted there on the top should be on already still.
Thank you very much. Well, I suppose it depends what you mean by a leader. In terms of the country or the regions that use it the most, around about 25 to 30% of investment through financial instruments under the structural funds is in Italy. That's not necessarily to say that it's the best. I think that, one of the key difficulties that we had is that there is a widespread absence of any impact data on financial instruments. And in fact, for a large proportion of the amount invested, we were not even able to establish how many final recipients there were, let alone what economic impact the investment could have had. In terms of the reasons for the use of financial instruments, one of the reasons that I didn't mention was pressure from the European Commission, which is very keen that people should seek a more efficient use of the structural funds from 7 to 13 in particular, and in the post-crisis period when budgets were flat. So that was a key driver. It's a less important driver in the current period because now an ex-ante assessment is obligatory, and you have to determine what the finance gap is and what the needs are.
Right, I'm just finding a question off Slido, because it's not. Oh no, hang on, it's now come ranked up. So if you can take that one that's on the screen for you there, Eric, and then we'll draw this round to a close. You mentioned market failures in transport, but you've investigated government failures in have you investigated government failures in passenger transport provision, and are cohesion investments the only way to deal with market failures?
We focus primarily on public service obligations, and there's an interplay between government and the market. And we see a number of difficulties setting up these public service obligations, especially when there are very few market actors, so the government fails about this interaction. We find it generally very difficult to work. We found in some of our case studies it was impossible to access the contracts of public service obligations. So actually knowing what the companies commit to is not possible because this is being kept secret by the public authorities. So this is one of the challenges we've dealt with. Obviously, cohesion investment isn't far from the main. This is once again, cohesion policy is about just giving the incentive to make a difference. It is not going to change transport in Europe. So we are talking about cohesion policy considering all kinds of public interventions in the field of transport and how they could help, for example, in capacity building, making it possible for actors to build better PSOs, to get some kind of level of comparison in these situations, which often, once again, you have this proximity between governments and market providers, which generate very unsatisfactory situations for the users and, in general, for the development of the regions.
Okay, right, so thank you very much indeed for that panel. We'll give them a warm round of applause. Thank you.